Hey YouTube, my name is Arthur. I'm a professional photographer based out of Southern California, and I started a YouTube channel today. On this channel, I'm going to be reviewing camera gear, cameras, lenses, all from the perspective of a professional use, but also somebody who uses this gear with his family. When we're going out to the park or going on a family trip, I have a very different perspective than a lot of other videos that you may have seen in regards to how some of this gear works in real life, and that's what I'm going to bring to you. As the title said, today I'm going to be giving you a kind of first impressions on the difference between the Fujifilm XE5 and the Fujifilm X100VI. I own both of these cameras, and I want to give you my thoughts on the differences between the two. So first, I want to start with kind of my experience with the X100VI. There are tons and tons of videos online about this camera here. To quote many others, the hype is real. I owned the Fujifilm X100VI about a year or two ago, and I didn't like that camera. It didn't suit my needs for a couple of purposes. One, at the time, I really didn't like that 35mm focal length. That has changed, spoiler. But the other was it was very slow. In my professional use, I use Sony, so there's somewhat of a autofocus bias. But after thinking about it and really wanting a camera that I don't have to think about changing lenses or keeping it very minimal, I decided to try out the X100VI, and it has easily become my favorite camera to date, just because of how easy it is to get amazing images, how easy it is to travel with because it's so compact and you don't have to change lenses. So this is by far my favorite camera at the moment. So when the XE5 was announced, I decided I was going to sell my X100VI and pick up the XE5, okay? Well, after getting the XE5, this is actually the second copy I've gotten of this camera so far. Funny story, and I'll get to it in a moment. But I was going to sell my X100VI, but after using both the X100VI and the XE5 for the reasons I'm going to kind of go through in a moment, I decided to keep the X100VI. I'm not going to be selling that. And now I'm testing out the XE5, comparing it to the X100VI. So I bought a copy of the XE5 and tried it for a little bit. I got the version without the lens, so I got just the body only. And I was using the Magic. I was using the 18mm f2 Fujifilm lens, which is probably my very favorite lens of all the Fujifilm lenses. Don't let anybody lie to you. This lens is pretty fast. Again, I shoot Sony. This lens is good. It's not just okay, it's actually very good. It's sharp, awesome lens. But as you can tell, it's a little bit bigger, right, than the 23mm that comes with this camera. So in any case, I was using this on this body, and it felt a little bulky. So let me get to now how I got to where I'm at. This camera, just on first feel of the camera, let me take this grip off. This is the small rig grip. I get small rig grips for pretty much all my cameras when I'm going to be using them not professionally. So this is without the grip, okay? It feels weird. I don't know how else to explain it. It feels awkward. I owned the XE4 a few years ago, and I loved the way that camera felt. It felt really good in the hands. And I know this is very similar, but because of this kind of like blocky, it's a little bit thicker, probably for the IBIS and some of the other technology that's in it, which is great. But it feels awkward because my two fingers hang off at the bottom. Even with this plate, it helps a little bit, but it didn't really extend enough to give me much here. Now, again, kind of comparing it to the X100VI. Right now, you'll see it has the small rig grip as well, but I will say, and everybody's different, right? Everybody's hands are different, but from my use case, even holding the camera like this, I don't know what it is. It's like the perfect shape, both the grip and the thickness of the camera. Now I do have this thumb grip, which helps tremendously. I probably would always leave that on, but honestly, I could walk around with it like this and I would have no issue. In fact, my son and I recently went walking around in LA and I had this grip on and I thought to myself, is this the one for the, yeah. And I thought to myself, I could probably do without it. Just because of how good this feels. So that just adds to why I ended up keeping the X100VI. It just feels really good. Feeling is subjective, right? So I ended up selling the XE5 because I decided the X100VI is perfect for what I was looking for a travel, family camera, something that's not my professional cameras. I have a Sony A7C II, which is what's filming me right now. That's another great travel camera, and it's probably, I struggle. It's between the X100VI and the A7C II for my favorite camera, but I've been using the X100 lately more often. Don't sleep on those Sony colors. I know a lot of people will give me a hard time, but that's okay. I sold the original version to Cam McKay, actually, who is a YouTuber. You can find his videos. He makes amazing videos and content, and just so happened he reached out and purchased my first version of this camera. Well, I was thinking, because I still had this 18mm f2 lens, I still wanted a Fujifilm body for this lens. That's how good this lens is. I really wanted to have something I can use with this lens. So I went back and forth on various camera bodies, and I came back to the XE5 and said, you know what, let me give it a fair shake. Let me get the one with the pancake lens so I can test everything, which is why I now have this version with the pancake lens. And I'll talk a little bit about the lens in a moment. Okay, hopefully the lighting didn't change too much. I had to switch out a battery for my continuous LED. In any case, we'll continue. Some of the differences between these two cameras. I mentioned some of the differences like the handling. I really like the way that the X100VI feels over the XE5. I talked a lot about that, I feel. Yeah, it feels very blocky. I don't know how else to describe it. Even with the small rig grip that goes with it, it still didn't like address the issue. I mean, it's gonna help me grip it better, but it still just feels, I don't know, maybe I just need to get used to it. The difference is when it comes to like the film simulation dial or the recipe custom dial right here, the FS1, 2, and 3, I found on the XE5 is very helpful. I really like it to switch between the recipes that I have saved. It makes things easier. Now, I will say this. I have personally found it very easy to be able to use my X100VI and switch back and forth between recipes by using the Q button, and I have it as a setting there. I'm gonna try to see if you can see it there. See, I use that. I use that to switch between my different recipes, and it's fine. Works perfectly great. I have that set up even on the XE5, but I have been using the FS custom recipe dial much more often because it's there and it's helpful. Okay, now a little bit about just some things I've noticed between these two cameras in regards to their smartness. I don't know how else to put it. So specifically when it comes to exposure, I feel that the X100VI gives a better exposure with less thinking. Okay, so again, I'm a professional photographer and I do video. I know how to set my exposure right in camera. But these cameras I bought specifically for being able to walk around with my family, right? And not having to think as much when taking the photo. A big reason why I use Fujifilm is because I absolutely love the JPEGs, the colors, the image that comes out of these cameras straight out of the camera. I absolutely love the look of it because I hate editing. I edit for my professional work. I know how to do it, it's fine. But for an everyday use, I don't want to edit, and this delivers that. Well, again, going back to not thinking too much about it, sometimes I underexpose by a stop or over by a stop. You know, if I'm not getting it exactly, I'm never like way overexposing or way under. But for some reason, the X100VI just knows how to bring it back like to perfect almost, pretty much a lot of the times. And so I don't feel anything weird about the exposure. And I am somebody who uses the, I'll tell you right now. I use DR400. I don't know, I think it's fine. I know a lot of people said it's too much. They use like DR200 or the auto. I like DR400, and so I keep my ISO at I think 400 or 500 to keep it that way. I like it. I don't think it gives it too much of a weird HDR look. But yeah, so the X100VI exposes really well. I know that's kind of, I haven't heard people talk about this, maybe because a lot of people I've noticed, they like to edit their files, even though they have a Fujifilm, that's fine. But I specifically don't. The XE5, it feels a little off when it comes to exposure, or I shouldn't say off. I feel it's more sensitive, like I have to really dial it in each time that I'm taking a photo or in a scene. It's a little bit more sensitive. I don't know how to explain it because it's not like I have to like every single time adjust everything, but I find it more frequently than like with the X100VI where I'm having to adjust for the exposure a little bit here and there. Take it for what it is. I'll do more testing to see if that's true. And again, or maybe I didn't mention this, but I've tested this with them having the same settings, even the same metering modes, and it just feels slightly off. When you use cameras as frequently as I do, you can feel things that are slightly off, and that to me felt slightly off. That's why I wanted to make this channel, because I use a lot of gear, equipment, cameras, lenses that we've all, YouTubed, right? It's mostly Sony, but I have been using Fujifilm for the last year and a half, 2 years. And every time I watch videos and I, end up getting the gear for whatever it is, I always find something that just, it's maybe not discussed or feels different or off. And my wife's always like, why don't you tell people? Why don't you start a YouTube channel? So here's where we're at. And this first one is going to be a banger because everybody wants to know more about the X100VI and the XE5. So next is battery life. Battery life on the X100VI, perfectly fine. Honestly, I don't know what to expect other than it gets me through the day. I take an extra battery with me and I rarely have to use 2 batteries. Though I did do some photo and video work for a ministry that I'm a part of, and I did have to use 2 batteries. when I get to the section about how I feel about photo and video and hybrid, I'll talk a little bit about that. It's not the camera for hybrid work, but I made it work. I can. I mean, in any case, battery life for the XE5 compared to the X100VI, again, because I'm testing and using them both, I feel a difference in the XE5. It's not as good as the X100VI. So that's something to keep in mind. The battery life just, I feel, is slightly worse. Let's talk about this lens. So I repurchased this, as I mentioned, because I wanted to try it out with the lens, the pancake lens that came with it. I really love the 35mm focal length now. I didn't always, but I think the X100VI really trained me to use that 35mm focal length, and I absolutely love it. I think it's a great length. So I figured, you know what, let me give it a try with this lens. I love how compact it is, right? It's great in that sense. Here's the thing about this lens. It's sharp. It's very sharp in that respect. But it's boring. I don't know what else to say about it. It's boring. Yes, it's compact, but it's loud and slow focusing. I mean, it's not the slowest thing, but it's slow for a lens that came out in 2025. This lens, this 18mm f2, that's like 10 years old, I think is faster than and quieter than this lens, which is totally weird, but that's one of the reasons why I really like this lens, along with its focal length. And so when I'm using this between the 2.8 pancake version versus the f2 version on the X100VI, this f2 lens, just awesome. It's also sharp. It has a better close focusing distance. This one doesn't have a very good close focusing distance. Not a lot of people care about that. I do, because I take pictures of, I know it sounds silly, but I take pictures of my kids' Legos really close up. Cue the Lego photos. And this one just doesn't do it for me. It's just kind of boring. Again, it is pocketable or compact, but maybe I'll get the 27 f2.8. I've had that lens before. I like that lens also, and it'll give me something a little bit different between these two as far as its focal length. So I'm actually selling this lens. I am planning to do a more of an in-depth review, so to say, of this camera and lens as its own entity before I sell the lens. Hopefully that's the goal. Okay, video or maybe like hybrid work. I mentioned the X100VI is not a great hybrid camera. I made it work. If you know how to use photography equipment, and you know, maybe some of my channel will be tutorials and how to do certain things, because I do know how to do different things, whether in photo or video. And so I can teach people that too. But it's not, the X100VI isn't a good hybrid camera. Neither is the XE5. But you know, you got some pros on the X100VI. It has the ND filter. But the thing is if you're doing something hybrid, and I don't expect anybody to do this, to be honest. My thought, if you're using this camera, is you are using it only in photo mode if you do use it professionally, or only in video mode if you do use it professionally, or some professional use cases. And then if you're using it more for family and travel, you're using it maybe interchangeably, like I do. I use both photo and video, but you know, it's not a paid gig where I'm having to go back and forth really fast and scene by scene. I take a photo, later on I want to do a little video, I switch the settings, fine. But if you're in an environment where you're having to change back and forth, it's just not the right tool. Even though it has that ND filter, which is great. I love the video. Like, that's another thing, kind of similar with the I don't like photo editing. I don't like video. I hate video editing even more, which is why starting a YouTube channel is not the easiest thing for me, but I'm gonna do it. But I like to do everything straight out of camera if possible, which is why I set my settings, exposure, right? Everything has to be right. Where am I going with this? Oh, that I really love the way the video looks out of these cameras, especially when you could like match the photo that you're taking with the recipe, because it's the same exact simulation and recipe as you took it with your, took a photo. It's the same recipe as when you took a photo. And so you can have that same look. I think it's great. So kind of talking about the XE5, it doesn't have an ND, obviously. I mean, you could add an ND to compensate if you want to do that. Again, the battery life, I did use it a little bit for photo and video, and it wasn't as much as when I did the X100VI, so I don't have a really good feel for how it competes doing that. Again, I don't think a lot of people are using it for that. But the IBIS is really solid out of this. I think it's fine. You kind of have to learn, especially I do a lot of run and gun, so I don't like to use a gimbal often. Even in my professional work, I try not to use a gimbal too often because I do a lot of hybrid and I don't want to deal with going from gimbal to taking the camera off. So I've learned to walk like a ninja and move and pan with my body. That's just the way I've learned and learned how to shoot video that way. Yeah, I mean, the biggest benefit for the XE5 over the X100VI is the interchangeable lens. Obviously, you could change the lenses. If I didn't already mention it, you know, a lot of people say that this camera is a X100VI with an interchangeable lens. I don't feel that way after using this a couple weeks. I feel like it's its own thing. I mean, this sensor and processor is, you could say that about the XT50, you could say that about the XT5, I believe the XH2S. You can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm probably wrong, but those are their own cameras, right? Like you don't say just because they have the same sensor and processor that it's an X100VI. I get it because it's like compact, it's small, but I would say it's its own thing, you know? So now if you're thinking about it from a compact standpoint with this lens specifically, or maybe the 27 pancake, sure, you could be like, okay, it competes in that sense. But then depending on how you use it and what you want to use it for, one can be better than the other. Obviously, I've told you my choice is the X100VI. I'm keeping this for sure. I mean, I'll probably end up keeping this, or maybe I'll sell it later. I don't know. I do that a lot, so I can use different camera gear and lenses, and which would be advantageous for this channel. So who knows? Anyways, those are my initial thoughts, reactions to using the XE5 and the X100VI. I'm sure that as I continue to use these cameras, I'll give updates and provide some other either tutorial or comparison videos. So keep it locked into my channel. Subscribe. I'm going to ask you to subscribe every single time because that's what the algorithm wants, right? Subscribe, follow, send it to your friends that are considering Fujifilm, the Fujifilm cult. And I'm not just going to stick to Fujifilm. I'll probably do Sony because I shoot mostly Sony, well, all Sony for my professional work. There's a lot to be said for that as well. And I'm not, or I'm up for talking about other camera gear, other brands as well. So again, keep it locked in here and we'll see you on the next video.